Liz Hirsch-Naftali, and welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. And today I am really excited because I am having a conversation with somebody who is not an elected leader, but yet works in the political arena. And her name is Penny Nance, and she is the CEO and president of Concerned Women for America. Concerned Women for America is the nation's largest public policy women's organization with a rich history of over 40 years of helping their members across the country bring biblical principles in all levels of public policy. I met Penny just after October 7th in Washington, D.C. I was there with a young woman named Sophia Abrams, and she said, I have somebody I want you to meet. And we literally met on the corner up in the Capitol. And I just still remember that moment because I was there really desperate and in a really hard place because my great niece, Abigail, had been kidnapped, abducted on October 7th after she and her brother and sister, 6 and 9 years old, witnessed the murder of their parents by Hamas terrorists. And I was up on the Capitol Hill trying to just meet with people, telling them our family story. And there was this beautiful woman who held my hand and prayed and said, I'm going to help you. And from that moment till now, we have developed a beautiful friendship, but we've also developed a sisterhood and just a powerful relationship based on a real tragedy, but that through it, we've been able to really find commonality and shared humanity. Not only is this an opportunity for me to really just say thank you to Penny, but also to just really have an honest, authentic conversation with a woman who has very different background than I do and comes to this from a different place. But when we came together, we were able to make and bring change. And for me, that's been a really special opportunity. So I just want to say Penny has really touched my heart. And as a way of introducing her, I just want to say thank you for being here, but thank you for being in my life and having helped our family and so many Americans who were held hostage and so many Israelis and people from over 25 nations who were kidnapped on October 7th and taken to Gaza, because you've been a real advocate, you and your organization, for their release. And also, I really want to say thank you for the work you've done to fight anti-Semitism and support Israel.
Thank you, Liz. That is so sweet. I feel sort of tearful as I remember that first day. You know, the world had turned upside down on us just maybe, I think it was like a 2 weeks earlier.
Yeah.
And we got a call from a woman in Israel that called one of my staff and said, we have some families coming, families of hostages, and they want to meet with some Republican members, but they don't really know how to do that. Can you help them? And we were like, of course.
Yeah.
And they said, well, they'll be there tomorrow. And so we were great. You know, that's the thing. You build these relationships with members and you trust each other. So I reached out to Cindy Hyde-Smith, a Republican senator from Mississippi, and she pulled together all the Republican women in the Senate. And then we reached out to Kathy McMorris Rogers, who's my friend, who's Energy and Commerce chairwoman from Washington State. And she pulled together Republicans and Democrats. And that was the first time we were together. And I just remember standing there. I'd worn Israel blue dress, just on brand, ready to go to the Hill. And I didn't expect to make new friends, but I did. And it's been such a sweet friendship in which, you're right, we come from different places. You're Jewish. I'm evangelical Christian. I think you're from LA originally and Israel and New York. I'm a hillbilly from a pastor's kid from Tennessee and Kentucky. I live in Washington, D.C. and have for most of my life now because I've been in policy ever since I graduated from Liberty University. And so we come from very different places in many different ways, but there's a sweetness to the fact that we found common ground and something so much bigger than ourselves that we had to move into this moment to advocate for, as it says in Matthew, the least of these families, these victims, the women that were raped and abused, and the families who lost people. And then, of course, little Abigail, and who was released, but the many others that are still being held.
Yeah.
I never want my grandchildren to ask me, what did you do, and not have an answer to that? Because to me, in my lifetime, this is the biggest, most outrageous moment that I think I may have ever experienced. And so our organization, we have 500,000 women around the country, and we have 285 Young Women for America chapters.
Right.
So in every way that we could connect, bringing hostage families to meet members of Congress, including Speaker of the House and Majority Leader Steve Scalise, and all these relationships that we have on many different issues with members, but being able to connect our new friends to them. Also, our Young Women for America leaders have been so strong on their campuses and led in times where I know especially at the beginning, where the Jewish students weren't ready yet. I think they were afraid. I think they're still afraid. And they were willing to lead these prayer vigils for Israel and then invite them to come along and link arms and love them and pray for them. And I was at many of those. And, they would invite the Hillel chapters and, different people. And I would watch these Jewish children just weep. And even in Clemson, which is, the deep South, Clemson, South Carolina, I had a Jewish student say to me, this is the first time since October 7th that I felt supported on my campus.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's just mind blowing that could be possible. Another sweet thing that I think has come out of just all this tragedy. And of course, there's so much, but I think there's been this sweet connection between the Christian kids on campus, the evangelical Christian kids anyway, and the Jewish kids on campus. And as they've made common cause to try to join together. And our young women feel very strongly that it is their job to protect their friends.
Yeah.
And to stand up on their behalf, even when they're hurting and, not quite able sometimes to do it for themselves.
I will say that one of the things that I read on your website, which really speaks to this moment, is proverb. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. And that's Proverb 31:26. And I think that sort of goes to what you're talking about. A lot of these young women have really reached out on campuses and have really given the strength and both ways. The Jewish students have needed the strength, the community has needed leadership. And it's just been, for me, I know I spoke at a conference that you had with a lot of these young women. And when you asked them to stand up, there were 30 women, and you asked how many had done vigils and how many had been advocates for the hostages on their campus. And literally everybody stood up. Mm-hmm. And, I remember I cried at that moment because it was just like, we're not alone. And these young women who are the future were also looking at this and saying, this is an international humanitarian crisis. This isn't about Jews. Because as we know, look, there are over 5 religions that are represented currently as hostages. And they were from the day when there were 250 taken. They represent currently 20 plus nations. So this isn't just America. This isn't just Israel. We still have 8 American hostages. And that's, something Americans need to know. But these are people from all over the world representing different religions and different families. And like you've said, this is a moment where we're all coming together to say, this is the truth of what happened on October 7th. And it is not okay, because you and I both know, whether you're a hillbilly or I'm a big city girl, this could have happened in our neighborhood. And we have to be very clear that it can't happen anywhere. There's nowhere room for terrorism, no matter where in this world.
We're right now in the process of sponsoring focus groups among Jewish kids on college campuses in order to pull out and have documentation of the trauma that they have experienced at this moment with the anti-Semitism. And I'm just now starting to get the audio back from some of these interviews. It's like I've gone back in time to 1930s. I mean, this is, my eyes have so been open to anti-Semitism. I knew anti-Semitism existed, but I thought we're pretty much over it. I think we've come a long way, I guess is what I would have said. I had no idea. This young Jewish woman was saying that she had gone to her mailbox and somebody had sent her an Israeli flag, and she had it just kind of balled up in her hand coming back from the mailbox, going to her dorm. And as she walked across campus, a woman spit in her face and called her a dirty Jew. I mean, I'm like, what is happening? Yeah. And so I am eager to pull out those stories to awaken our country, and certainly the Christian church, to what is happening to these kids. We have come at a moment, I guess it was always there. It just was hidden below the surface. But anti-Semitism, the poison of it has bubbled up to the surface now. And now that we see it, what are we going to do about it? And we are resolved to take it head on because there's no place for it in our country. And we have to speak out against it. Liz, you know that I speak around the country. I've just spoken a very large church. And one of the things I said to them, we talked about this issue. We talked about, the rapes, everything that happened on October 7th. I also called the church to account because the truth is when you grow up as a young evangelical kid, you read the Diary of Anne Frank and you learn about, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and you learn about a woman named Corrie ten Boom who hid Jews during the Holocaust in her home. She lived in the Netherlands, but she was a Christian woman. And we always give these books to our children and, point out the heroes. But I believe one of the reasons that we have done that is because we're assuaging the guilt that is on the Christian church. Because the truth is they didn't stand up. And those are notable people. And there's Christians within the righteous among the nations. And that is important to point out because we want our children to have heroes to aspire to. But you got to tell the whole story. Mm-hmm. And no, I wasn't alive at that point, but I'm alive now.
Yeah.
And my message to the Christian church is, what are you going to do now?
Yeah.
Are you going to stand?
Yeah. Well, look, I grew up also thinking, there's anti-Semitism, but when I woke up on October 7th and I found out that my niece and her husband had been murdered, and my niece was an American and her husband had been murdered in front of their children. And then a few days later, we learned that Abigail hadn't died because we had thought at that point she had died in her father's arms when he was killed. And then we learned a few days later that she had survived and she was a hostage. And, one of the things that I couldn't understand right away, and this was even before the war began, after Israel attacked, was that people were already celebrating. People were already denying October 7th. People were already saying, as some people said, it was deserved. And that just the narrative became so dirty and so ugly so quickly. And I have to say that it was like at that moment where, we're neither one of us are, in college, we're not young, but it was at that moment in my age and my life where I thought there's something very dark and demonish here. And it's going to be something that will keep growing. And so part of the reason why I keep telling the story of Abigail and all the hostages and really expressing these families and what they're going through. And while we're sitting here and having this conversation, there's 100+ people that are in dark tunnels being abused by Hamas terrorists. And I can't sit back, and I know you can't either. And so, part of this conversation is, yes, we have found something that we can, both understand, but what we're talking about is an international humanitarian crisis. And the world should be in an uproar because, like I said, this isn't about Israel and it isn't about Jews. It isn't about Christians. It's about everyone.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
So,
but activism starts in your own neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like for our members who are, some of them are moms at home or working moms or single women that are working, like everybody has a different platform for which to speak. Yeah. And we all have responsibility for those around us.
Yeah.
And that's how you start. And so for people that are listening that like, okay, I don't do Fox News or I don't do CNN or I don't have a podcast like Liz or have the opportunity to go to Capitol Hill, you still have a responsibility. And that's what I tell our women. Your responsibility is to talk to your friends and neighbors and then go to the town hall meeting that your congressman has. Find out how they voted on funding for Israel. We will have that vote up on our website. If you need to come look, if you don't, where else to look, we'd love to have you at concernwomen.org.
Right.
And if they voted wrong, talk to them about it.
Yeah. And I noticed on your website, by the way, you have all the hostages, you have a countdown. So you really invested not just in talking and on the campuses, but you've actually landed a place where people can go to Concern Women for America at your website and really understand what's happening, who the hostages are, people who, in blessed memory, etc. And I think that that's really important for people to understand that, if they want information, they can even go to Concern Women and learn about what's going on in Israel. And so I think that's important to bring up.
Yes, we wanted from the very beginning to have a countdown clock because it's so easy for people. Like right at the beginning, there was so much attention, and then it kind of died down. In some ways, that was almost scarier because to forget them is the completely wrong thing to do. And if they are forgotten, how do we work to get them out? And then, of course, what happened with the pro-Hamas groups on campus, they don't know they are in some cases, but they are, brought it back to the forefront, and now we're talking about it again. And I do hope that it's hard when you watch the news, I think, to have the right perspective.
And also, I will often say, and to get the truth. Sometimes it's hard to get the truth.
That's true. That's 100% true. And everybody tends to be echo chambers, whatever's, what you're listening to. You're better to flip around channels to get the overall view of what really is happening. I hope that, Liz, that these loud, angry voices are not representative of the vast majority of Americans. Yes, they're loud and they're well funded. Oh my goodness. I just want to know so badly where all this money is coming from, because somebody who puts together events and puts together rallies, hundreds of millions of dollars have been spent. You don't just snap your fingers and bring that kind of numbers of people together. It's very organized and it's extremely well funded. Yeah. And I hope that the CIA and others are actually tracing the funds, because I'm sure that it goes back to Iran and, other nefarious players. And, how it gets here is probably very complicated, but I don't doubt it. And then other very misguided people who are funding this effort that are hurting Jewish students, Jewish kids, and hurting our nation.
And I think hurting our nation as a whole, and also what the values that we have of freedom and liberty. And so, one of the things that I can say is we need to keep this conversation going. But I want to also just get a little bit, because I really hadn't known where you came from and your father. And could you talk a little bit about growing up and what kind of influence your parents had? Because for me, that's also interesting to know where, and I've talked with different leaders, like, where do you come from and what kind of parents? So could you share for a few minutes just
about your family? Fairly typical of, an evangelical Christian family, but probably for a lot of Americans is atypical. My dad was a pastor in my entire life. He pastored. I was born in Tennessee, near Gatlinburg, Tennessee, near Dollywood. People that know what that is. And then he moved to a little town of 6,000 people in Kentucky when I was 8 years old. So I grew up in Tennessee and Kentucky. His was the big, don't think of the huge mega church. It was like a church of 400 or 500 people, but he was very supportive of Israel because he believed his Bible. He believed Genesis. And I've spoken at different places to over the years and past years, not anything to do with this, even to Jewish audiences. And they're like, okay, help me here. Like, you're evangelical. What does that mean? I said, well, it means that we love Jesus and we want everyone to follow Jesus, but don't let it hurt your feelings, because in the little tiny town that I grew up in, other kinds of Baptists try to convert each other, and we're all worried about the United Methodist. And so it's better for you to think, for me to believe my Bible and to believe Genesis, because I actually believe in the Abrahamic covenant. And I think it's forever. I know that God gave the land to Abraham and to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and to their descendants. And I know that I am told specifically that God will bless them that bless thee and curse them that curse thee. And it may not feel like it at this moment, but I know that I'm needed. And I believe the vast majority of evangelicals know that they have a special relationship with Israel and with the Jews. We have a shared belief in God and history, and we're part of the same family. Yeah. And so I grew up and graduated from high school. I think my high school class, tiny little school, I think I had like 60 people in my graduating high school class. And then I was given a scholarship to go to Liberty University. By the way, I'm on the board of trustees there now. My family was poor. I mean, my dad was the pastor of these little churches. In fact, my first job out of college, when I went to work on Capitol Hill, I made more money than my dad had earned. And he was, a 50-year-old man at this point. He never made much money because they would offer him raises, but he would say he never wanted to earn more money than the members of his church. And in our church were a lot of coal miners and, impoverished families. Although I have to tell you, somebody asked me today, like, did you know you were poor growing up? And I said, I really didn't know because everybody was poor. You just kind of fit in. And my godmother owned a clothing store, so I had nice clothes. I just didn't know until I went to college, and then I figured it out.
Right. But then you can also make the argument about poor in money, but rich in values, rich in love. And I think that's an important
That's
difference.
right. I had two parents that were married and stayed married. My older brother's adopted. My love for adoption, I think, stems from that.
Yeah.
They adopted him when he was 6. He was a troubled kid. They were infertile. And then 3 years later, I was born, which often happens that, I think that surprised baby. And then I went from Liberty University and went to work on Capitol Hill and stayed in Washington and fell in love with policy. And for the first time, found myself. Growing up, there weren't many opportunities for women. And the professional women that I knew tended to be teachers or nurses, and that didn't fit me at all. And I really didn't even know what I was being called to. I knew I needed an education. My parents very much wanted me to have an education. And so when I went to Liberty, Jerry Falwell Sr. was very thoughtful about bringing strong professional women to campus and to speak on, we called it chapel, then now it's convocation. And so he brought Peggy Waymeyer, who was the religion correspondent from ABC News, and he brought Elizabeth Dole, that's how old I am, who was senator, I think, at the time, and other incredible women leaders. And one of them was the founder of our organization, who's Beverly LaHaye, who just passed away about a month ago at almost 95. And she was an activist. And I suddenly sort of fell in love with the idea that I could work on Capitol Hill and I could be a part of our government and help lead our nation. And so that's what happened.
And let me ask you this, or let me say this. One of the things that I also found really interesting is that we both have sons that are graduating at this time. Yeah. They're both young men, and we're both mothers of these young men that we are looking at to, one, be, whatever kind of leaders they want to be, but to be moral, valued human beings, respect people. And I just thought that, as we're talking, it made me realize, we're also sharing this moment where our boys are, graduating and leaving college, and your son is really going to serve our country, which is very special.
He'll join the Army as a second lieutenant. We'll be having a little ceremony for him August, I think, 17th.
Yeah.
And I'm so proud of both of my kids. My daughter just worked on Capitol Hill and just now left to go to a PR firm, but she's in communications as well. But my son's graduating from Virginia Tech. He's a business major. But the thing I was going to say is, I gave my kids, my husband and I gave them just a little bit amount to give to charity as part of their Christmas gift.
Mm-hmm.
And we said, you can choose where it goes, but here's this money and you can feel free to, invest it. And my son said, I don't know who I want to give it to, but I want to support the IDF. I just want to make sure that they have what they need. And so anyway, we were able to look around, and I know Yael Eckstein. I don't know if you've ever met her. She runs the International Fellowship of Christians and Jews, and they do a lot to support the IDF in a lot of different ways. So he was able to make sure he was giving it to somebody who was going to do good work with it and was happy to support the IDF. So I felt like I hope that's encouraging to you. You have this, you see all the crazy on campus, but there are great kids out there who have their heads on straight and want to do the right thing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I do. I think that you're right. It is the majority of kids that are out there focused on, how do we make this world better? How can we participate? And look, everybody has a right to protest, and everyone has a right to, be opposed to things. But I think through our conversation and through everything that I've been seeing, we just have to keep steady and kind of go forward, and having young people that we see, your son, my son, and so many of their peers. And like I said, the group of young women that you work with, it's really inspired me, because I see that there's a lot of people that are just wanting to make a difference in this world and are out there really fighting, each day to see what they can do to make the world better for others, which is beautiful to me.
It is.
So, okay, this is the last part where I like to ask just a few fun questions.
Okay.
And they're really light ones, but, just for people to get to know you, because I always wonder these about people. So I put them in as sort of the end of my questions.
Okay.
What is your favorite color?
Oh, to wear or just
Both.
in general?
However, you could do both.
Well, to wear it's black. It's the vast majority of you'd think I was a New Yorker. I
Right.
love black. And even in college, I was wearing black. I just felt sophisticated in it. I also love yellow. When I was a kid, it was yellow.
Okay. And what is your favorite sound?
Babies laughing.
That's a nice one. Yeah. What is your favorite smell?
Oh, there's a bunch of smells that I don't like. It's a joke in our family. I have the most sensitive sense of smell. Oh my goodness, when I was expecting it was like even worse. So I spent, my husband's like, I don't think it's a good thing to have a strong sense of smell. There's apparently way more bad smells in the world than good smells. Oh, my favorite smell. I don't know. I like a lot of different colognes. I know that's not like a great, and I'm not going to just say it's like grass or, you know, it's not the outdoors. It would flowers. Sure. I don't know. I think I like the smell of Bergdorf Goodman.
You know what? That's funny. Somebody once said, I like the smell of when I go into a hotel and you can just smell whatever scents they have.
Yes.
So I get that one.
The Ritz-Carlton in Hungary.
Okay.
I don't know what it is, but it was one of the best smells I've ever smelled.
Interesting. Okay. What is your favorite meal? If you were to say, this is the one meal that I just love, what would that be?
No doubt, I would want waffles. I like breakfast for dinner. And often on Mother's Day, our rule in families, like birthdays or, you know, special holidays, the person gets to choose where the whole family goes to eat. And it might be a really nice restaurant, but it might also be like Silver Diner for me. Yeah. And we all go get waffles.
Sounds yummy to me. Who is your biggest cheerleader?
My husband. My husband is such a great cheerleader for me and encourages me. And I'm so grateful for that. I know many, many people don't have that, but he always has been. He's always been proud. He's always encouraged me in times that I've faltered. I remember one time specifically, he said, Penny, I see you doubting yourself. Don't do that. Yeah. You don't need to do that. And really kind of coaching me up.
Beautiful.
But he's always proud when he's never, I don't understand men or women, but I think it tends to be more men who are somehow, they are jealous or something of their wife's.
Strong women.
Yeah, or something. I don't know. That I've never experienced that in my life, thank God. And he's the more prominent or the more incredible thing I get to do, the happier he is.
I love that. Thank you for saying that. That's beautiful. Favorite music?
I like everything except for modern jazz.
Okay.
I love hair bands from the 80s so much. My playlist on Spotify is so confusing, but because I have everything. I have Christian, I have, contemporary Christian music, and I might have like some rap, and then I might have some like 80s Cinderella song. I mean, it's just, but there will not be any modern jazz. It's just I don't follow it. It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay. So you have a diverse Spotify list, and I'm assuming, and what's your exercise? What is your exercise of choice?
Right now, I like to do a lot of things. I was a runner for many years. I've run one marathon, a lot of 10 milers, that kind of thing.
Very impressive.
But as I get older, I like my Peloton bike. Mm-hmm. And it's right there in my house, and I don't have to go anywhere and any kind of weather, it's right there. And I really feel like I've done something when I've gotten off of it. But I like to exercise, and I try to exercise every day.
Yeah.
30 minutes to an hour.
Yeah. And where in the world would you and your husband love to travel to that you haven't been before?
That I've never been to? Gosh, we've had a lot of conversations about that recently. We're going back to some places. We've both been to Israel, and I've been several times, but we'd like to go and spend like a month and see different parts of it that we haven't been to before. I have not been to Jordan. My husband's going to Jordan soon. I really like Europe. I know that's not exciting. I did go to Taiwan just about 6 months or a year ago, and that was very different, very, very different. Not a lot of people who were non-English speakers, but I don't know. I just love Europe.
Okay.
I have to say.
That's a good one. So at the end, and I could talk to you for a lot longer, and we will keep talking offline, but hopefully we'll keep talking and sharing our experience with others, because I think there is like you said, it's sweet, it's beautiful. And it brings me to my last question, which is, I always ask, what is your definition, or what is somebody's definition of joy? What brings you joy? if you feel joy, how do you share that joy?
Mm,
And how does that
that's
make
such a good
others?
question.
And I think that kind of is really something that we're missing, because people do go to the negative and there's a lot of hate and distrust, as we've talked. But I think joy is something that we can bring from within and share with others.
That is such a good question. I think people make the mistake of equating happiness with joy. Happiness is temporary. It's based on emotions in the moment. Joy is much deeper. And my joy is based on my faith in my family. And I'm so grateful that I have a work that I believe in that I feel like really contributes to others. Just by being real and being honest. There's the beautiful, our young ones especially deal with the Instagram world where everything's perfect and glossy and, and everybody's hair is perfect. Makeup's perfect. Their lighting is perfect. We're talking about lighting, how important that is when you get to be a certain age. But that is not reality. There's good days. There's bad days. Even if you're doing things you love, you have bad days. Even if you love your spouse, you fight with them sometimes. Even if you have strong faith, sometimes you have doubts or you have hard days. But being real about that, I wrote a book in 2014 called Feisty and Feminine, and I tried to be very honest in that book. I mean, my life's not been perfect. I've had a great life, and I've gotten to do so much more than a little girl from Tennessee and Kentucky should have ever gotten to do. I've gotten to meet with presidents, and I've gotten to meet with senators, and I've gotten to travel in the world, and I've gotten so many things. But also, I was assaulted in the late 90s while I was pregnant with my daughter out on a running trail in Virginia in the bright daylight. And thankfully, a passing motorist stopped, and I wasn't raped, but I was traumatized in a way that I think for many years I've still had to work through and walk through, even, to this day in so many different facets. I struggle sometimes to even talk about that because sexual assault is such an important issue. I think this has given me a perspective into it, but I almost have like survivor's guilt because I actually survived and wasn't actually raped, but I was physically battered and everything, kind of kidnapped. And I got closure. I was the woman that the system worked for, and he was arrested and sent to prison for 15 years. And he assaulted two other women besides me. So my story is a little bit unique, but I do think it's a way, and this is a little bit afar, I guess, of what you asked me, but I think we bring joy to others by reaching out to them, being real with them. I want to share the love of Jesus to anyone that's interested in listening, but I also want to love them where they are, whatever that looks like. Yeah. And part of that is me just being real about who I am, what I believe, what I've experienced, and inviting them to come have a cup of coffee with me and figuring out, like you and I did, Liz, really, we're two women that disagree on a whole bunch of issues, but we found one that was so important to both of us, and we were able to build a friendship on that common ground. I don't know why that more Americans at this time can't seem to do that. I don't know why we've all gone to our corners instead of reaching out to your neighbor who lives right next door to you and flies a different kind of flag. I've got an Israeli flag going in front of my house right now. I've had people walk by, take pictures of it. I live in Alexandria, Virginia. I'm always wonder where are those pictures going? Is it to a friend to encourage them, or is it something to send to somebody so they can, make a snarky remark? I don't really care. I just want to say what I need to say and love people as they are right where I am.
Well,
as an imperfect woman, a wholly imperfect person.
Well, imperfect, but with, beautiful imperfections, but really trying to do the best. And I think that's what we are all trying to do. And I just want to say thank you, because first, I've gotten to know more about you, and you are a beautiful woman inside and out. And I really just appreciate you. And I appreciate your authenticity and your honesty. As I started this, you really touched me, and I could go on, but you've been there for me. You've had my back, but you've been there for so many others. And I just want to say thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in person real soon. But in the meantime,
me too.
Just know that I appreciate and I'm grateful for
Thank you.
Our friendship.
Same. And I can't wait to see you again and give you a hug.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Remember to hit subscribe to get an alert when a new episode is live and for exclusive content. Ciao.